Recording in progress.
Sevgili genç misafirlerimiz,
distinguished young guests, distinguished alumni of the Chevening, distinguished participants, we're very honored to have you today. Welcome.
sonunda
Finally, although it's not fully face-to-face, but we're still very happy to have met you, to have convened together in the world and in Turkey in particular. The young people are now engaged and running at the forefront of the struggle for climate crisis. The young people have demonstrated a huge determination. For a better future, we strive. For a better world, we strive. And their expectations, their demands, requests shed light upon our path, paving the way for a better future for all of us and forcing us to be more ambitious. From all the world, the young people have convened around COP26, the youth summit, which ended yesterday. They renewed their expectations. And right after this summit in Turkey, we are engaged in a youth activity, which is very, very meaningful. This event is funded with the Chevening funds as well as with the participation of Chevening Alumni. As you would know, the scholarship program is a very prestigious program which has been financed for almost 30 years, helping the decision makers of the future, providing them with a unique opportunity for training. A Master of Arts program. It is not only an academic scholarship program, but also finds permanent solutions to social problems, and it brings together all the relevant stakeholders. So far, the program has had more than 2,000 graduates in Turkey, and the applications for the new academic year still continues. So for those of you who are interested, please feel free to apply by 2nd of November latest. Distinguished young people, the Paris Agreement was adopted 6 years ago. We are now passing through a new critical period because it is the very implementation period of the agreement. And finally, COP26 begins in a month in Glasgow. I would like to introduce to you our targets in brief as the presidency of COP26. Our basic objective is to enhance the global action on climate. With the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that low emissions and climate resilient improvements are very important. Our overall objective is to have a stable and ambitious outcome as the result of COP26. So within this framework, we have been focusing on 4 main pillars. The first one is, as you would know, is about the reduction of the greenhouse emissions. It is very important that we stabilize the global temperature increase by 1.5 degrees only. However, with the existing liabilities, it's not possible to do so to achieve this target. Therefore, we invite all the countries to convene around more ambitious reduction targets. The second pillar is about the adaptation to climate change. You know, in Turkey, we have seen the musilaj, the wild forest fires, and floods, which are all disasters very related to, resulting from the climate change. The disastrous results of the drought have been tremendous. Big rivers, big lakes are dried, which is the case in the world as well. So we need to act urgently for adaptation. The third pillar is about the financing of the climate. It is important that we achieve an annual $100 billion of climate finance target for green transformation. So we have to mobilize both the public sectors as well as the private sector's financing resources. And the fourth pillar is the enhancement of cooperation. The climate crisis requires a collective mobility on a global scale. All the stakeholders should strive towards the achievement of the very same goal, bearing in mind the principle of inclusiveness. We would like to invite all the relevant stakeholders to take part in this process. The most important actors of this cooperation is the youth. And we have had some important initiatives involving the young people. First of all, at our office for COP26, we have established a special youth unit, which is called the COP26 Civilian Society and Youth Consultation Committee. And in addition to this, within the framework of G7 and G20 summits, we are also supporting the organization of Y7, the Youth 7, as well as the Young Summit. And we're still supporting all of these initiatives. Our priority goal is to make sure that young people participate more in decision-making processes and to make sure that their voices are heard. Within this framework, young people who would like to call for actions to the leaders participating in COP26, these young people could support the Global Youth Letter on Climate Action by writing down their names and signing this letter. I all invite you to do so. You will see the link of the relevant letter on the screen. We also would like to receive the maximum benefit from the creativity of the young people. Just for this reason, we have invited a young person here to the hall today, from whom we have really inspired. She has made bokashi bucket made from recycled plastics in a contest organized by the British Council, and she has ranked as the first in the world. Aysel Abasova is with us today. So, hello Aysel Hanım, welcome. Before we proceed with the Q&A session, she's gonna introduce her project to us. And we're looking forward to it. Of course, climate change is also one of the most important priorities set forth by our embassy as well. Working together with the climate stakeholders in Turkey, we have strengthened our cooperation. We're working with the government, with the local administrations, with NGOs, with the representatives of the private sector, with academicians and universities. Hence, we have a better understanding of the success as well as the challenges faced by Turkey. In addition to all of these, we're also carrying out certain projects on local climate action, zero waste, sustainable transportation, climate resilient infrastructures, and marine biodiversity. And we attach utmost importance to the participation of key stakeholders like the young people as well as women. For instance, on International Women's Day, we have convened together with the leading pioneering women in Turkey on climate-related issues. And On 23rd of April, the Festival for National Sovereignty and Children, we have convened with the young people in a special session organized by the Middle East Technical University. Today, being with the young people is a great privilege for all of us. We fully appreciate your determination that you have demonstrated in combating climate change. And we are also ceaselessly working towards providing you with a better future. I would like to extend my warmest greetings to all the participants, and I hope that we will have a productive activity today altogether. Thank you very much. Right now, distinguished participants, before we proceed with the panel, I would all like to demonstrate two video messages that have been sent to us from two very important colleagues of mine, Massimo Gaiani, the ambassador of Italy, and Turkey's chief negotiator in climate change and the deputy minister for environment and urbanization, Professor Mehmet Emin Birpınar. Let's watch them.
Address the participants to this event and to highlight the role of youth in tackling climate change. As you know, Italy and UK are co-presidents of COP26 this year. While UK will host the COP in Glasgow, Italy has organized preparatory events throughout the months of September and October, and notably the first Youth COP in Milan that was held a few days ago, an event that has brought together more than 400 young climate shapers and activists from all over the world, connecting them with policymakers and the business community. Listening to the voice of committed young people is fundamental. The planet we will leave to future generations is the one we are shaping right now. We must push for a sustainable growth, which can combine the respect for the environment with the reduction of the possible negative spillovers on the economy. The recent announcement by President Erdogan on the ratification process of the Paris Agreement by Turkey is a very important news. It will be a great stepping stone towards a successful G20 under Italian presidency and COP26. There is still much to be done. Global emissions have recently slowed, but the trend is still there. Please help us to find new innovative solutions. This is what we expect from you. We need your vision, motivation, and participation. Thank you for your attention.
Distinguished representatives of the British Embassy, we're all very happy to come together for this awareness-raising activity organized for the young people. It is the young people that attach utmost importance to climate change, both in Turkey and in the world, and their support to us in that sense is very unique. They push us towards better work. They push us to do more. The research throughout the world has demonstrated that between the ages of 9 and 20 years, the Z generation are very much interested in climate change. Like 70 to 80% of this generation believes in climate change and believes in the necessity to tackle with the climate change. So we have not received this world as a heritage from our ancestors. We need to do something. Both our generation and the previous generations have polluted the atmosphere tremendously and have paved the way for a change in climate. And the global temperatures have risen by 1.5 degrees. This will introduce floods, wild forest fires, storms throughout the world, and they will also cause drought and famine. And each and every other day, we're seeing the traits of this trend throughout the world. So us, the decision makers, have to do a lot. We have to convene, we have to cooperate with the young people so that we could leave a better world for the next generations. Today in Milan, with Murat Kurum's participation, the minister's participation, we have come together for the Youth in Action for Climate panel. We are answering the questions of the youth from many different parts of the world before COP26. Before the Glasgow meeting, as the Republic of Turkey, we have taken a very important decision to ratify the Paris Agreement, and this has been announced by President Erdogan at the General Assembly of the United Nations, which was largely appreciated by all third parties in the world. From now on, we will strive for combating climate change. We will cooperate with many disadvantaged countries. We would like to lead those disadvantaged countries in this combating climate change, because the countries that are polluting the world are also abusing the environment because they are getting richer and richer. But behind that richness and welfare, you see there's a huge pollution affecting the air or the soil. From now on, we have to start transition to sustainable development models. We need to embrace this as our assets without polluting the air, by providing better drinkable water resources to young people with a cleaner soil. I mean, we have to do this development. We have to pass from linear economy to cycle economy. So recycling activities are very important. We need to deplete the natural resources in a much more careful manner. The population is increasing, which in the end means that pollution is increasing. So altogether, for a happier and more peaceful world, we have to pay utmost importance. We have to pay due diligence to environmentalist movements, the youth. We have a lot to learn from the young people, because they are the ones that push the decision makers to act. I see that motivation in young people. Hopefully from now on, they will be engaged more and more in the future to tackle with this problem. Thank you very much for this important program, by the way. Thank you very much for your efforts. Well, we will be moderating this panel together with the Chevening Alumni. First of all, I would like to begin my remarks. Each and every alumni will first introduce themselves, and then we will pose our questions to young people. Just a few minutes. Could you please all introduce yourselves? First of all, shall we start? What are the factors that pushed you to become a climate activist? Yigit, let's give the floor to you first. Would you like to say a few words? This is Yigit Ali Doğan. I'm 17 years old. I'm a 12th grade student at TED Ankara College. I consider myself as a climate activist because I refuse the world going into its doom as it's destroyed. With the recent activities, especially the 2019 Kulu Park protests, the TED Ankara College activities, and last week there was the global world strike on climate. Altogether, with all of these activities, we have been adopting the UN model as well, and I also took part in these activities in an active manner. I had the chance to know many different people, to visit many different places throughout the world, and to raise awareness throughout the world. In Lisbon, for instance, there was this conference of the Yale University. I had the privilege to represent myself, my country, and my school. And in European Youth Parliament, I also took part in another session. What pushed me towards becoming an activist for climate is that if it's not me, then who's going to start doing this work? This was the basic question that motivated me, because the climate crisis has been going on for a long time. And although we have achieved certain progress, still we do not stand at our well-desired position. As Gandhi had mentioned, please be the change that you would like to see in the world. You can only start changing the world by starting to change yourself. Actually, we're all climate activists. All we have to do is to make this heard by everyone. Thank you very much for your patience. Hello, everyone. This is Alara Civelek. I'm 18 years old. I'm also a climate activist. So how did I start my work? First of all, this did not happen at instance. I have felt great respect for animals, for environment since I was a child, and this is how I was raised by my parents. When I started my high school education, I had the chance to connect to the internet and do more research on climate crisis, and I realized that this is a huge problem. I did know that the climate was changing, but I thought this was a natural process at first. I didn't know, or I didn't recognize that it had a serious dimension caused by humanity. Then I did some personal research and I discovered that this was caused by the people. So why are we not raising this at our school? Why are people not knowledgeable about this issue? Then I started reflecting on this topic. Duru is one of my closest friends. Duru and I decided to raise awareness in our country about this because the time was passing and this was never raised. Together with my friend, we decided to start a blog on social media because social media is very powerful, which allows us to reach as many people as possible. First of all, we focused on pollution and environment. This was the general topic of our contents, which was followed later by other content which raised awareness among citizens on climate. Then we became a part of certain initiatives. We started participating in different tasks. On 24th of September, just like we had this global action initiative, I took part in it in Istanbul. Some 4,000 participants attended, and that was that strike that we had organized for climate. And yesterday I returned from Milano. I took part in COP26. I represented Turkey, pre-COP, I'm sorry, and we have had the chance to express ourselves with regard to our expectations to the decision makers, to the world leaders. Hopefully they will listen to us. Thank you very much.
Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Atlas Sarrafoglu. I'm 14 years old, and for the last 3-4 years, I am a climate activist. The main issue that led me to become a climate activist is that this future is ours. This future is all creations, all living beings. I am not only thinking about my future plans, my family, my future job. We are thinking about everyone. And that is the reason why I became climate activist. And in 2019, as Greta started her actions, I heard her name over the radio. And I said, this brave young girl is addressing all these policymakers, all these decision makers. And she said, how dare you? You are stealing my future. And this influenced me. And I said, I want to be involved in such an action in Turkey. And after that, I have seen that in Turkey, there has not been a climate call yet. We couldn't find it in social media. We asked a lot of institutions and organizations. However, we didn't find it. And then there was a global climate strike call initiated by Greta. On the same day, all climate activists would go out and make a climate strike. I'm talking about 15th of March, 2019. And after that, for around 2 weeks, no one went out on the street in Turkey. I waited a bit. I wasn't very self-confident. I didn't think I would create such a big impact. But as no one took a step, I said, why shouldn't I? And I had a short video on social media. After I broadcasted that video, a lot of people contacted me and people started showing attention to me. And in Açık Radio, where I heard Greta's voice first, I was invited to a program and I called for a strike myself. The first strike was great. Around 600, 700 people showed up in the strike in Istanbul. And I started introducing myself as a climate activist since then. And I also have my interviews that I write for Yeşil Gazete, which is a green paper, newspaper, both in English and in Turkish. I publish interviews so that I can inspire the young people in Turkish. I can give them a reference that they can use. And I wanted to give them a platform where they could have their voices heard. And I also write in GQ magazine. I have a column there. And in Açık Radyo, I was very happy that I was invited to be a radio host. And on Fridays at 2:30, I have a radio show in Açık Radyo. Thank you very much already. Now it's time to give the floor to our alumni. Thank you very much, His Excellency Ambassador. And I would like to also thank you very much for gathering us around such a great organization. Our young people are really very inspiring and they have achieved great works. And I do believe that using the power of social media is very smart, and all of us will have questions to our young people we have here. But before these questions, I want to introduce myself. My name is Gokce Yorukoglu. I am 2015-2016 Chevening Alumni. And for 15 years, I have been working around the topic of climate change, protection of biodiversity, nature protection, and sustainable development issues. For 9 years, I have worked in the United Nations Development Program in various environment projects. For example, enhancing forest protection areas, marine protection areas, sustainable development were among the issues that I was involved in implementing the projects on. The first national climate change adaptation strategy and action plan preparations involved me as well. I took part in it, which was very much an honor for me. Again, in UNDP, the United Nations Secretary Ban Ki-moon had a sustainable energy for all. I followed this initiative of Ban Ki-moon, and I pushed the government. I actually contributed to, assisted the Republic of Turkey in terms of committing to these commitments and achieving these commitments. And then I had my master's degree in nature protection and sustainable development. And when I came back, a national scientific NGO, Nature Protection Center, Doğa Koruma Merkezi, became the place I started working. And in terms of creating climate change resilient cities by empowering women, better integrated management of plastic wastes were among the many projects I managed. And in 2020, British Council's Professional Achievement Award was offered to me due to my activities in nature protection. And then I worked as an independent consultant for climate change. And finally, since January 2021, I have been working in FAO, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization is my home. I have been working as an expert, a senior expert. So without further ado, let me proceed with my questions. My question will be to all three young friends. You can answer in turns. You will have around 2 to 3 minutes. My question is, what do you do personally to raise awareness among young people in Turkey against the climate crisis and to strengthen the climate movement? Anybody who would like to go first? Yigit? Sure, go ahead. Well, I already talked about what I have done in my introduction speech. I will fortify these words in addition. In order to raise awareness on climate change in Turkey, all these activities especially increased in the recent years, as my friends mentioned. One of the biggest factors was, of course, Greta's call for global climate strike, and also young people can have better access to each other thanks to the developed technology and digital tools. It had a great impact. And also we are seeing I can see a very clear progress in this in schools. As an example, in my school, wherever I look, I see a poster that warns me about climate, or in bathrooms over the taps there are warnings to avoid waste of water. And the teachers are providing some speeches over the classes and seminars about climate change resilience. So by starting young, starting in preschool up to grade 12, influencing young people with this awareness is very important. And last week, 24th of September, climate strike was organized. As my friends also mentioned, it had a great impact in Turkey, and I was also a part of this. As far as I remember, in Ankara, we gathered in Seymenler Park last week, and the Model UN, as I mentioned before, in national and international conferences, I try to take part and make my voice heard in Model UN activities, especially in the conference in Lisbon. We try to make an effect, and as a result of the elections in Kayseri, I was elected to be a member to the Europe Youth Parliament, and in Izmir, Istanbul, Eskişehir, in various provinces, I took part in many activities, and my aim in all of these was to raise awareness. And of course, in Engen conferences, I represented my school and my country in MUN conferences. And I took part in various activities. What I see is that in 2019, we started using the slogan, either zero carbon or zero youth. So on the 25th of September this week, as a reaction to the climate strike day, we opened some posters and integrated some climate talks in our classes. Finally, us Turkish people, our father is Atatürk, our ancestor is Atatürk, and Atatürk chose to move an entire building rather than cutting down a tree. So as the generations of this leader, our duty should be to protect the future, the nature for future generations. Thank you very much. Hello. When I was introducing myself, I already talked about what I have been doing, but I can further elaborate. With my friend, we manage a blog over Instagram. It's called 1.5 degrees, 1,5 derece. We have a follower audience of 1.5 million, for around 40,000 people, and we have different themes. For example, fashion industry, plastics, food. So different themes are included in our research, and we prepare content and we publish this content. And after that, we contact the scientists who are working on this, and we invite them to our live stream series. So our followers have in-depth information about the topic. And in Fridays for Future Turkey, we organize climate strikes, and also I take part in an organization team. And as mentioned by Yigit, on the 24th of September in Istanbul, we were involved in a very large-scale strike. And due to the pandemic, this was the first physical strike we did. Previously, we used to have digital strikes. So we were sharing over social media to reach people. This is what I do in my work. My biggest focus, of course, is to raise awareness about climate, because in my country, I do not believe that there's a high level of awareness, frankly speaking. And I also mentioned I was included in pre-COP conference in Milano, and I represented Turkey. And there I was involved in various working groups, and many young people from all around the world came together to declare our demands. So this is the work I'm involved in. All around, I always try to raise awareness of the people around me, not only using social media, I also use my environment, my friends, and my family. Thank you very much. Hello everyone once again. What I actually try to do is to make everybody's voice heard. Try to do that. As my voice became heard after my first call, people started inviting me. Can you talk about the climate crisis? It could be a school meeting, it could be a press release, or I never rejected that invitation. I always accept them and explain climate change to every person. It's a huge crisis that should be explained in detail scientifically to every segment of the society. It's something that shouldn't be just spoken by lips. It should really be put into action. And really, both as people, the public and policymakers should take these actions from my point of view. And in June, I had a TEDx speech, and that TEDx speech was again about climate crisis and youth. It will be broadcast on YouTube soon. I hope you can watch that as well. And I met a lot of people abroad. The first place I visited was Switzerland, in Lausanne. The climate activists gathered, and the first young climate activist I have seen, everybody has seen, was Greta. I had the opportunity to meet with her there and chat with her there. So I met with a lot of climate activists, professors, and there were climate training sessions with professors and with many scientists. So we have taken part in climate classes, and we had 2 large-scale strikes. It was very impactful, and we have seen that everybody there were looking at us, were influenced by us. It was covered in the news. And after that, I went to COP. And in COP, again, I represented Turkey in meetings as youth activist, and we had a giant strike there. Again, I had the opportunity to talk to Greta there. As I said, it was a big strike. 500,000 people, 500,000 people were on the streets of Madrid. It was great. So this is it so far. Thank you very much. Thank you, His Excellency. Well, colleagues, on one hand, I am envying of what you are doing indeed, while I'm very proud of you. You have lived to the fullest so far, and you're continuing. Let me ask a question, but before this question, let me talk about myself. I work as an EU affairs expert at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Directorate of EU Affairs. It's been more than 10 years since I have been working in the monitoring of EU-funded projects on behalf of the Directorate of EU Affairs. The projects are agriculture projects and transport projects. As you all know very well, that transport and agriculture are the biggest, let's say, damagers to climate. And these are the 2 sectors which have the biggest impact, and especially in transportation projects. We have an area of, this transportation sector is on the top of our agenda, we can say. And based on the experience I had in transportation sector, I had an academic research in 2016 with Chevening scholarship. I worked with Leeds University, which is very prominent in transportation research. I worked in a Transportation Research Institute on sustainable transport. So I came back to Turkey, to my post in the Directorate for EU Affairs, and similarly, I work in monitoring of agriculture and transportation projects. And I'm trying to support the preparation of new projects as well. Well, friends are here. They talked about what they do in Turkey, and Atlas, for example, met Greta. You all have international connections, but apart from Greta, as far as I know, all around the world, there are young people who are striving in these issues. So what do you think about these global youth movements? Do you have communication with them? Do you keep contact with them, and do you cooperate with them? Or do you have any plans for cooperation? Alara, would you like to start? Well, first, I can speak on behalf of Fridays for Future Turkey. We have international groups, and in these groups, we usually discuss when and about what theme would the global strikes would happen. In Milano, this Fridays for Future, we had the opportunity to meet with people all around the world. We gathered there, and I met Greta as well, and many other activists. There, really, as everybody united, especially in pre-COP, we believed that it was an environment where we could raise our demands, and we were all together, so we felt empowered, we felt powerful, so it made us feel good. So this Friday, today, actually in Milan, they are organizing a big strike, but unfortunately, since I came back yesterday, I couldn't join. But being together, seeing people physically, because normally we could only communicate through the internet, it made me feel really good. And really, when young people come together, we create a huge voice and a big echo. That is what I felt there.
Like you have stated, the climate movement is a global movement supported by climate activists from all over the world, creating a pressure, going on strikes, explaining about the climate crisis. To create a difference, we come together, we together jointly implement projects. And I would like to introduce to you about the projects. First of all, saving Tuvalu. Tuvalu is the name of a small country that is consisting of islands in Pacific Ocean at the highest level above the sea level, 5 meters. I mean, the highest altitude of Tuvalu is 5 meters. So in a few years, I mean, in a few decades, it's going to be underwater, and there will be a migration of the citizens of this country. However, where to which country in the world these people migrate? This is a question mark, because there are many citizens of Tuvalu who do not wish to migrate, who do not want to refrain from their lands. So we have raised a global campaign to make sure that the voices of Tuvalu people are heard. They're also very poor. I mean, they're not performing very well in terms of economics. They do not have drinking water, clean drinking water, and we are also running other campaigns to provide clean water to Tuvalu citizens. Last year, there was this there was this COP activity which was not carried out face to face, but we organized it separately and we prepared a declaration with the delegates of different countries. We have set forth the problems, challenges faced by our own countries, and we have talked about the actions that need to be implemented. And we sent this declaration to the policymakers in our own countries. So we're trying to prove successful in these topics. Another topic that I would like to raise is the MAPA group. The most affected people and areas is the name for this abbreviation. And there is an injustice in terms of climate because they're the ones who have the least carbon dioxide emission, consuming fossil fuels least. But there is this injustice in terms of welfare, the lives of people, the lives of all the living things. They're not as important as welfare or money, let's say. So an action needs to be taken. That's all I would like to say about our global activities. Thank you very much. Well, the global movement was again launched by Greta in 2018, as we have mentioned before, it raised a lot of voice in Turkey as well. Fridays for Future is the framework that welcomed that initiative, and my colleagues have assumed lots of responsibilities. I took part on it. My foreign connections have increased, but they were halted due to COVID-19 pandemics. The Lisbon and the European Youth Parliament's activities, although they were late, they were still organized, which enabled me to meet many new individuals, many new climate activists. And in Turkey, we see more and more sessions, activities, for instance, climate strikes organized in 12 cities in Turkey. There's this thing that really attracts my attention. I'd like to mention to you about this. There's this motto, we don't want fake promises. This is an important motto, I believe we all, because it really gives us a clear and direct message, fulfilling all the missing information. Montreal, climate agreements like the Montreal or Paris or Kyoto Protocol, the failure to implement these fully, or the failure to fulfill the promises that policymakers have made. That's really striking, and I can say that we are engaged in a lot of cooperation to raise the voices of different climate activists. Thank you very much for listening to me. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving the floor to me. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for inviting me to this important panel. I'm so pleased to be with you. And I had the chance to meet Gokce and others, the other Chevening alumni, just as I am. We are here with all of our energy, and we're here to set forth ceaseless efforts. Yigit, Alara, I'm so happy to have met you as well, because your energy is so high. You have our full support. We really believe in you. Seeing you in action is tremendous. Ipek, Benek, my name is. In 2010, I received the Chevening scholarship, and I studied my Master of Science degree at London School of Economics. However, I focused on environmental economy and climate change as a topic. I selected these. At this very point, I had the chance to work at the project at the Climate Change Department of the United Kingdom. We were responsible for monitoring of the carbon dioxide emissions of the EU and the monitoring of these activities. So Chevening and Great Britain has provided us with tremendous support. And since I have returned to Turkey, I have been working for the German International Cooperation Organization. Together, we are running out projects on climate change, on environmental issues, on energy. I worked for energy efficiencies in the residential areas, for the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions at the school buildings, and for the creation of prototype buildings. And I also working on plastic wastes. So what we're talking about when we're talking about climate change, actually we're referring to a broader scope in terms of environmental protection. It's one of the greatest components of environmental protection. So you're not only tackling with this issue from the perspective of climate change, but from a wider perspective. And it's so nice to see that you're doing so. At this point in Milan, as you have mentioned, I would like to speak about what you do in Turkey. We would like to hear from you. What are your final messages that you would like to transmit to the decision makers? What are your expectations from decision makers? For instance, what are the global steps that need to be taken in combating climate crisis? What are the 3 major steps that need to be taken while combating climate crisis? This is my final question to all of you. Well, globally speaking, the demands and the expectations of climate activists are very clear. We would like to reduce the depletion of the Fossil fuels used since industrialization, they have no positive contribution whatsoever to the well-being of this world. We should all acknowledge this fact. So far, there was 386,000 ppm. Now it's 417,000 ppm. So since I was born, so each year the amount is increasing. We would like to have those fossil fuels to remain underneath the earth. So everyone should pay attention to science, to scientific findings, because it confirms that there is climate crisis. We need to listen to the words of the scientists because science is leading the way towards what needs to be done. Another issue that I would like to raise is about stopping. We would like to stop the inequalities in terms of environment, in terms of climate. The least affected countries actually provide more carbon dioxide emissions. We do not want any countries to release carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere. And finally, I would like to read out loud my final message. The climate crisis has been known for tens of years, but due to the fake promises of the decision makers and the failure to act, is a betrayal to the future of our young people. There is systematic abuse and there is a historical debt. So the climate crisis and the inequalities in climate, we have to face them and face their origins. The decision makers should start acting, and it's really important. We don't have much time left. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. As someone who had participated in pre-COP, I would like to touch upon some three main issues that were raised. First of all, what we must do is to hear what the science has to say to us, because it also provides us with solutions. However, the decision makers have to listen to the scientists. We should definitely say goodbye to fossil fuels, but we should do this as soon as possible because time is up. We don't have much time. 2050 will be the time when 2050 is not an ambitious goal. I mean, as I've seen in pre-COP, of course, decision makers, leaders are actually knowledgeable about this fact and have been stressing this over and over. But no leader has provided us with a net or clear or direct commitment like the reduction of emissions by a certain date. They did not provide us with commitments. Because we don't want them to say, this needs to be done, that has to be done. We want them to talk about clear targets. Secondly, you should raise the voice of the young people in climate crisis. Under the pre-COP conference co-chaired by Italy and United Kingdom has become very, very effective, bringing together young people from all over the world and hearing their voices. But what we want is, we have issued a document, a letter, as the output of that conference. It needs to be taken into account, and its full implementation is necessary because we have set forth lots of efforts in that conference. We want our demands to be taken seriously. Another important topic that we have raised throughout the conference is the trainings, the education on climate. By 2030, in all of the world, we would like to have more education and training on climate. Because I am knowledgeable about this topic, just because I searched it personally. It was not raised enough in the curriculum of my school. What about people in disadvantaged part of the world? Do you think they have the chance to know about this? Education and training are the basis of everything. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have to touch upon some similar issues because the factors causing climate change currently are set forth, well known by everyone: fossil fuels, the failure of the decision makers to act on a concrete manner. Recently, the climate activities have increased, facilitating our work. However, still, we do not stand in our well-desired or well-deserved point. As I've mentioned before, Fridays for Future. We don't want fake promises. In the last 50 years, starting with Montreal, there are many national, international climate agreements, protocols, and policies that have been adopted, but no country has set forth some certain, understandable, concrete obligations or commitments. They have failed to do so. Now I would like to read out the words of the Deputy General Secretary of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, about 2030 goals of the United Nations. There are certain, this is one of the 30 main challenges that have to be addressed. Amina Mohammed has stated that with current progress rate, it's not possible to fully reach those targets by 2030. Right now is the time that we must start doing things firmly and in a determined manner. Sustainability is very important. The continuation of this process is very important. Training provides the basis for everything. Right now, we have been organizing climate movements, climate strikes. We have been becoming parties to protocols, and we have been taking precautions which should be known by future generations, because these are the actual mechanisms which will help us stand on our feet when it comes to preserving the nature. As the three main steps that need to be taken, first of all, the climate problems should be embedded into the curriculum. A new binding international agreement must be devised. And finally, you should increase the opportunities for young people to take part in climate activities. Finally, climate change and combating climate change serves to the objectivity of providing us with a better future, the destroying of the biodiversity in the marine areas, and that's really bad for future. The young people should have a say in that. And this is the 2 out of 3 most important decisions that we need to take. After all, this crisis cannot be averted with the effort of just one individual, but together in a collective manner we have to act. Thank you very much. Bravo. I have had the privilege to hear about the thoughts and ideas of the young activists. Like I've just mentioned, as I've mentioned in my speech, before we proceed with the Q&A session, I would like to display this Destination Zero Innovation Challenge. I would like to give the floor to Aysel Abesova. From out of 43 countries, she contested with 243 contestants, and she brought the award, the prize, to Turkey. Aysel is inspiring us. Aysel, could you please share with us what inspired you to take part in this contest? Could you please inform us about what you did? Hello, my name is Aysel. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the floor and for providing me with the opportunity to tell you about what I have done. Well, I was keen on recycling. I was very much interested in recycling. I was melting the plastic bags with iron and trying to merge them as a panel. And now I'm still trying to do the same thing using different methods. After my college education, I went to Barcelona for my master's degree. And in Barcelona, I studied on new generation production technologies. And my thesis was about sustainability and recycling. From PET plastics, I was building benches. And then after I returned to Turkey, together with my colleagues and with my partners in Istanbul, we established the Backlab Design Company. And that design company is engaged in the production of new generation design technologies. Then I had the chance to meet British Council, and I was awarded with the first prize in that contest. And we have created this bucket from recycled plastics. So our company is focusing on recycled plastics. My partner is sitting with over there. From now on, I mean, in the last 4 to 5 months, thanks to the support of British Council and the consultation provided by them, we're establishing a business plan on recycled plastics. Right now, we have two equipments in Istanbul generating new items from the plastic waste material of the city with high aesthetic look. These are design products, of course. The municipalities, different brands we cooperate with different institutions we cooperate with. Our ultimate goal is to benefit from the plastic waste and to create new products that would serve to the needs of the city again. We do acknowledge that the waste plastics are very useful and very unique materials to work on, and we also would like to increase the awareness of the Turkish citizens. Thank you very much. Congratulations again. We are so inspired. Now I would like to give the floor to Gokce Chevening Alumni. She will be moderating the Q&A session, and we will be engaging with our participants here as well as our online participants. You can all pose your questions for the Q&A session. Have a nice day, ladies and gentlemen. If you see fit, we could give the floor to the opinion as well as the questions of our online participants. First of all, let's start with a question from the hall so that we will have given some time for our online participants to write down their questions. But I need, hello, microphone please. My question is about COVID-19 pandemic and the climate change. The relationship between the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, because I believe this year's COP is the most prominent and important COP meeting ever held. For the very first time, we had the chance to see for ourselves how climate change affects us all. Thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, so far it was not fully recognized by all stakeholders. Its outcomes were not fully acknowledged, and it was only tackled with in academic studies. But for the very first time, we see physically how much the climate change would cost to on our economies. Therefore, I would like to ask my colleagues, how has pandemic influenced climate change work? Or has it created any difference in terms of the perspectives adopted so far? For instance, the ratification of the climate agreement by Turkey, do you think there could be a connection between this ratification process and the COVID-19 pandemic? These are the questions I'm curious about. By the way, as we are asking the questions, as the participants pose their questions, if there's a certain person that they're addressing their questions to, please mention it. Thank you very much. My question is to Alara.
First of all, before Turkey, I believe globally, this was what happened. With the pandemic, we realized how fast we can change because there were radical changes all around the world. And especially, but of course, us as young people, we had a huge impact on this because especially in the last 2 years, climate activists raised this issue all around the world intensely. And these two are big impacts from my point of view. And in Turkey, of course, the pandemic could have had an impact because throughout the pandemic, as people spent time at home, maybe they started researching more and speaking more about this issue. That could be also an impact, a factor. But us, especially as young people, we, for example, have a campaign in order to ensure the ratification of Paris Agreement, and we were raising this issue all around Turkey. I do think this has also an impact. And us adapting to the pandemic conditions, it was fast, and we have seen how fast we can adapt to these issues, and it showed how fast we can act towards climate change. Thank you very much, Alara. I also would like to have a brief addition to what you said. When COVID first started, and especially when the lockdowns started, when everybody started sitting in their homes, as you know, the nature revived, wildlife started emerging, plants grew, and indeed we have seen some positive impact of COVID on climate. But this actually is, let's say, although COVID had short-term positive impacts on environment and the nature, this might be a misreflection because when COVID ends, many enterprises will try to keep up with what they lost. They would want to go back to their previous production and manufacturing methods. And they haven't earned money for a long time, so factories will start working again. And this actually will increase production on one hand, because people would need to compensate for their losses, and maybe twice the production will take place. So this means twice the greenhouse gas emissions. So we cannot just simply consider that, yes, people went in their homes, they were locked down, and nature revived, but we need to consider the long-term effects of the pandemic on nature. Will it be worse? I think we should discuss that as well, consider that as well. But I think that the pandemic also taught us that, as you know, we're living in a digital age now. All our meetings have been held over various online platforms, digital platforms, and this indeed showed us that, yes, we could have very efficient meetings online. We can carry out our relationships. So we don't need to fly somewhere. We don't need to go somewhere with a bus, with a train. Do we really need to contribute to the emissions more? This made us question it as well. So any other questions from the audience, Mr. Ismail? Hello, my name is Ismail Gökgöz. I am also a new alumni of Chevening. I am from the Banking Regulatory Authority. And what we are trying to understand is actually the financial and economic impacts of this climate change and the pandemic. From my point of view, I think we need a new economic model. When we are calculating the GDP, we do not take into account these factors. I think that we should take these into account. So the pandemic, or COVID, what it showed us indeed was, yes, there are some, let's say, corrections or renovations about the pandemic, but the world can recover fast when we take steps forward. We started using more environmentally friendly tools and instruments. And when we make these types of changes, we have seen that we can ensure this reorganization better. We always talked about Greta here, but what I understand is young people like imaging. They need someone important, a model. We need a leader where people will look up to. So I think in order for people to recognize this, maybe we need imaging. What do you think? Is it the correct approach? My question is to our young friends. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ismail. Anybody who would like to answer? Who would like to go first? I actually didn't understand the question very well. Well, as you know, imaging is important for young people and for everyone. So having a role model is important for everyone. What do you think about this? Because you talked about meeting Greta, and meeting Greta maybe had steered your thoughts to some other direction. Microphone, please, for the interpreters to hear. Well, young people would like to see more images. Maybe there should be more activist leaders, and more people should be involved. And do you think it could be a good step forward? Well, sure, the more climate activists there are and the more knowledgeable we are about the topic, the better. But what I realized is that everybody is waiting for somebody to say something about it, because instantly everybody focused on this issue. So I think everybody was waiting for someone to show courage and speak out about this. This is relevant for both the local level and the global level. When I announced the first call, people contacted me, the press contacted me, as I said, and people started supporting me. And this is how we became a team. This is how we grouped together and we started doing some things together. Absolutely, yes. A role model. Well, when we say a role model, actually, it is raising someone in the other's eyes. It's not very good, because in our groups, we don't have a hierarchy. We are all climate activists and we all have the same aim. So everyone, not Greta in focus, but everyone should become climate activists themselves. I think this is more ideal. Let me add something indeed to what Atlas said. I definitely agree with you. And on one hand, the more we need role models, the more we need people from among us. Well, the policy shouldn't be seen a high-level issue that we cannot reach, rather than something that we cannot interact with. We need a more engaging, close dialogue. I think that is very promising from my point of view. So not only good practices, good examples, but really ordinary people to be involved in this process and having their voices heard, I think, is also a very important step. So I hope in Turkey, among our young people, we would see many more people who will take up this role. Thank you. May I add something? Well, as a person who met Greta, what I can say is that she is a regular young person just like us. And I had the opportunity to talk with her. And every time she delivers a speech, she is covered in the media, because once a single person starts a movement, it has a big impact. We can see it in religion, we can see it in mass social changes. It may start with a single person, but I think all of us can become a Greta. We don't need someone to be a big role model. We are all role models indeed. And in terms of climate crisis, we always raise our voice, and the more people do it. Well, actually, what's important is not to be a role model. It's not imaging what's important. What's important is for what we say to be heard, our voices to be heard. Of course, some people can be highlighted, they can be covered more in media, but what's more important is for the messages to be heard. And I think all of us should be taken seriously. Yigit, anything you want to add? Well, a very small thing maybe. Well, this role model that was mentioned in the question, or an icon, of course, is an important factor in climate change actions, because this person is dedicating themselves for climate change action. And as my friends mentioned, we definitely need someone like that. But another dimension of this is that not everybody can motivate millions of people for this movement. Rather than trying to have one person motivate the millions, everyone can speak with their circles. I can become a model for my friends in my climate activities. Maybe 20, 30 people whom I know, if they're engaged in climate action, I can become a Greta, not on that level, but being a huge role model, speaking in the parliaments of countries is more difficult. This is much easier to disseminate this issue. For scaling up, I think this is a good approach. Thank you very much. May I add something small? I think I'm surprised. But seeing this awareness in our young people is very great. This consciousness is important, because we see what comes to our mind is that it's important to be Greta, but what you have is an important awareness from two dimensions. One, rather than handing over the responsibility, because you might think she is doing on behalf of us. Rather than that, you can have the approach, I can do it so. And the second thing is, yes, Greta is an important figure, but it's short term. In long term, your actions will be permanent. That's why it's very valuable, I think. And we have an online viewer, a question from our online viewers. The question is to His Excellency, the Ambassador. As you know, COP26 is hosted by the UK this year. You, as the United Kingdom, how do you combat climate change? How did your policies change in terms of combat against climate change?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'm going to answer in English, if you forgive me. I think if you ask our Prime Minister what are the most important things we can do as a country in the UK to combat climate change, he would say you need to set targets for the reduction of emissions, and then you need to have policies that will realistically deliver those targets. So we have a 2030 target, and we have a net zero target for 2050. And our 2030 target is extremely ambitious. More or less, it is a reduction of 67% of greenhouse gas emissions compared to pre-industrial levels. And to get from where we are now in 2021 to that position in 9 years' time will require radical changes. They'll require changes in the way we generate electricity and power, moving almost entirely to renewables. It means big changes in the way we transport ourselves around the country and internationally, so that all vehicles will need to be powered by electric batteries or by hydrogen fuel cells, and the electricity for those batteries must come from renewable sources. It means putting an end to using coal. It also, crucially, means finding new ways to make absolutely critical materials like steel and cement, which we need in our modern economies. We can't stop building houses and other buildings. We just must find a way of producing the cement and steel in a low carbon manner. So these all we have a plan which is a 10-point plan to achieve our goals. And what the British government is doing now is filling in how to implement these plans in concrete ways and passing the necessary legislation to do so. And just to give one example, we have adopted a law which says basically that from the year 2030, it will not be possible in the United Kingdom to buy a new car that burns fossil fuels, or a new lorry. No, I think this may be limited to cars, but certainly for cars, no cars that burn fossil fuels after 2030. And again, if you think what will be required to get from where we are now to that position in only 8.5 years' time, it's very ambitious. But as we were hearing from everybody, it's absolutely essential to be ambitious if we're going to keep global warming to the 1.5 degree limits that we have set ourselves. Thank you.
Çok teşekkürler Sayın Büyükelçi.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Well, actually, we are approaching the end of our time. Maybe one last question we can receive if you have any. If not, well, I have a question to His Excellency, if possible. If there are anybody else who would like to ask their question, well, please pose your question and then we can close the session. My question is actually, as you know, Turkey, well, the UK is the country which has the highest number of waste exports to Turkey. There's plastic wastes and wastes that are exported to Turkey. But what we are seeing is that they should be recycled. But what we are seeing concretely is that they are poured into sea or they're burnt, so they're not recycled in practice. My question is, do you think about continuing this practice, or do you think of any change governmentally or in any way, any changes happening?
It's a very good question, first of all, so thank you. So the position on plastic waste, and I realize we're sitting in the presence of someone who is making a career out of innovative ways of recycling. The position on the export of waste is that waste should only be exported to licensed recycling companies. So it's not as though we export plastics that we don't want in the UK and we don't care what happens to them. And you will remember that in the first half of this year, there was a mini scandal in the media because, as you say, plastic waste that had come from the United Kingdom was found on the sides of roads in Turkey. It was being burnt or thrown in the sea. And obviously that should not be happening. And the Turkish government took a decision to ban the import of plastic waste from the United Kingdom with effect from the beginning of July. But there was a bit of a pushback from industry, which said, actually, we have perfectly reputable businesses. We can accept this waste and we can convert it, recycle it into something useful. And that's our business. So the government thought again, said, all right, we will accept this waste from the UK, but only for these reputable businesses. In the UK, you had the same debate, but from the other end. So in the UK, public opinion was deeply shocked at the idea that we were exporting waste to Turkey, plastics to Turkey, and that they were not being properly processed. And there was a public outcry in the UK about this. And the government was forced to look again and review its own policies. And if you look actually what happened to exports of plastic waste for a while, they dropped very considerably. But it remains our position that we are not against the trade in plastics if it's genuinely for recycling purposes. But we are very much against the trade in plastics if those plastics are just being put into landfill or thrown in the ocean or being burnt.
Çok teşekkürler Sayın Büyükelçim.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and I want to thank all participants for your attention. Now for the closing speech, if you have any closing remarks, I would like to leave the floor to His Excellency the Ambassador.
Teşekkür ederim.
Well, we have received some very productive questions, but unfortunately, we are about to come to the end of our time for today's session. I'd like to thank all the young people for their frank contribution, for their honest participation in this session. I'm so grateful for our conversation. We can continue with our conversation in our terrace, by the way. We are going to have a reception in the terrace floor. So this is not the end to it. We can continue with our dialogue upstairs. And as I conclude my remarks, I would like to state once again that I'm so grateful for your kind participation. Have a nice day.